We look at each other. What are you saying exactly? Like, having this baby today? And she's like, yeah, it looks that way. Did I really just leave my house thinking I was gonna go for a checkup and now I'm having a baby today? What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to be back on YouTube creating content. Y'all, it has been a minute. Last time I was on here, I probably looked a little different. I was very pregnant, and then everything just kind of got crazy and I took a little bit of a break, but we're back and I'm so excited to be sharing my birth story with y'all today. I have talked a little bit about my journey through pregnancy on the channel before, so you can go back and check that out. But today I really wanted to just do an entire recap of my birth story itself. If you know, you know, it went very differently from what I planned, but I think it's important to share the real journey and to share how things didn't go according to plan, but how it was still such a beautiful experience and such a beautiful birth. Just wanted to first off say I've missed you guys. I've just been soaking up all of the time with baby. He is, oh my gosh, he's almost 6 months, y'all. Talk about this video being a long time coming, but you know, we're here and we're doing it, and that's all that matters. Without further ado, let's get into it. So for those that don't know, I actually went into labor 5 weeks early. So baby was preterm, not premature. He was healthy. He was just really small and really unexpected. I planned a home birth from the very beginning. I have always been passionate about home birth. It's been something I've experienced through family members, and I've always really desired that for my own journey. My entire pregnancy, I went through a midwife, went through a birth center, and kind of had that plan of giving birth at home. My pregnancy itself was so smooth. I am one of those people that genuinely loved being pregnant. Honestly, just a really good experience for me, and so I kind of assumed that when it came up to birth, everything would just kind of follow suit. I never had any complications. I never had any weird things happen that made me think, you know, maybe things won't go according to plan. But God had other plans. I did everything at the birth center, and basically the way that works is they see you just like a regular doctor would see you. So on the same sort of interval schedule or whatever you call it, like I would see them the exact same amount of times that if I were going to a hospital or going to an OB, that I would see that doctor. Fast forward toward kind of the last leg of my pregnancy, I was definitely starting to feel more uncomfortable, you know, not sleeping, having to pee all the time, like just the typical pregnancy things. It felt pretty normal. I will say, like the last 2-3 weeks of my pregnancy, I literally would feel like the baby was just gonna fall out sometimes. Like he felt so low, and I started to feel this like really intense pressure. But every time I would tell someone, or I would tell like my friends who had babies, they'd be like, oh, like that's totally normal, you're just like in the home stretch, you know, nothing unusual. So I'm thinking, all right, I'm fine, I'm good. Forward to the day I went into labor. I wake up that morning, it's a Thursday morning, and when I woke up, I had this kind of like what felt like an intense period cramp. And it happened like 1 or 2 times. That was it for like, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. I was feeling a little uncomfortable, and then it totally went away. So at first I was like, okay, that was definitely a little weird, but I didn't think it was like a full-blown contraction or anything like that. Keep in mind, looking back, now that I know what a contraction feels like because I've experienced it, I would definitely be able to probably tell that's exactly what it was. But at the time, I'd never had a contraction. I'd never had Braxton Hicks before, which is kind of like those false contractions that are like in your abdominal area. So I'm thinking like, I don't know, maybe it's Braxton Hicks. Maybe it's just, maybe I just need to drink some water, you know, I really didn't know. But it went away and I was like, okay, no big deal. And I also actually had a midwife appointment that day. So I was like, I'll tell them about the little cramping situation and see what they have to say. I go about the rest of my entire day. I went to sushi with 2 of my girlfriends. Before you say it, yes, you're not really supposed to have sushi while you're pregnant, but I was at the end and it was cooked. Most of it. I went to sushi with them. Everything was fine. I actually was even talking about the morning situation with my friends because one of them had just had a baby 5 months prior, 6 months prior, and then the other one has 2 kids too. So I'm talking to them about it and they're like, oh, it probably was Braxton Hicks. Like, you know, when it's time to go into labor, like when you're really starting labor, you will know. And I'm like, okay, that makes me feel better. Because I'm sitting here with you guys, right? So clearly it's not that bad. Finish that. I run some other errands. I think I might have gone to Target or something like that. And then I had my midwife appointment later that afternoon. So I go to the midwife and I'm kind of explaining, yeah, I had this weird crampy feeling earlier this morning. And they're like, okay, you know, check everything out. They did a couple tests. They checked my pH. It turned out I was really dehydrated that day, like really dehydrated, and they were like, that can sometimes cause like false contractions or even early labor, so like you really need to stay hydrated. They tested me for a couple other things. Other than that, they were like, you know, if it happens again, let us know, but if it was just once or twice and it totally went away and you haven't had any strange sensations since then, you're probably fine. That's that. I go home, I finish out some work for the day, and then around 7:38 we have dinner. I remember because this is the last meal that I consumed until I ended up giving birth. We had these huge burgers. They were so good. Shout out HelloFresh. And after we ate dinner, I started to get really uncomfortable. I started feeling these same type of like period-like cramps where I was like, all right, this is starting to worry me a little, like, and I just laid down. I'm laying on my side and I'm just like telling my husband, like, I'm uncomfortable. I don't know what this is, but like I have these cramps, you know, I don't know if this is what Braxton Hicks feels like. It's like, all right, I'll run you a bath and see if that helps. So he runs me a bath. I get in the bathtub. He goes to the gym. I'm still kind of in denial that anything even close to labor could be happening at this point, because I'm like, I just turned 35 weeks. Like, there's no way that I'm going into labor right now. As I'm in the tub, I'm just soaking in there, trying to relax. I had this Christian hypnobirthing app where it would like read affirmations over you, read scriptures over you, and it was like this really soothing kind of like meditative app that I would use sometimes. So I put on the app and I'm just like kind of getting into a trance. But as I'm in the bathtub, I'm noticing like, okay, this is becoming more and more frequent. So around like 9:15, while I'm in the tub, I'm like, I should probably start timing this to see if there's any sort of pattern happening here. So sure enough, I start timing, and the contractions or the cramps were happening every like 10 to 12 minutes, but it was like on the dot, 10 to 12 minutes, another one. So I'm like, all right, this definitely isn't normal. Like from 9 that night when the contractions started to when I gave birth, which ended up being the next day, I never slept. Around like 3-ish in the morning, and at this point I'm writing down all these contractions. Like, I think I still have it in my notes app. I will put it here so you can see. They're speeding up. They're like 10 minutes apart, 8 minutes apart. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like we gotta call Amy, our midwife. So I send her a text with all of the time intervals. I'm like, hey, I'm getting these like intense cramps. These are the time intervals. Know what to do, basically. She was actually in a birth at that time, but she saw the message about 6 a.m. and then we got on the phone with her and she was like, okay, this definitely doesn't sound normal. So what I would do is come to the hospital by my office and just get checked out and rule out labor. So you'll go to the hospital, rule out that it's labor, try to get things, you know, slowing down and just see what's going on, and then they'll probably send you home. Could be some things happening due to the dehydration, or it could be something else, but we won't know until you go and get it looked at. Around 8 in the morning is when we finally leave the house. By this time, y'all, I don't even know how I didn't realize I was in labor, because the way I was just moaning and waddling around the house, like, clearly something wasn't right. But you know, when you've never had a kid before, you just don't know. Like, I didn't know what was happening. Anyway, I'm like, all right, let's go to the hospital. Never even a thought in my mind like, oh, hospital bag, what am I gonna bring? Because I was planning to give birth on my living room floor, you know? Not thinking we're gonna be there too long. I'm like, all right, let's just go get checked out, whatever. I asked my husband, I'm like, I don't know what to bring. Like, grab a backpack, bring my Kindle. Maybe I'll get bored while I'm there. Spoiler alert, never got bored. And we just like hop in the car and go. So I have literally nothing except the clothes on my back, a backpack with a Kindle in it, and myself. So we get to the hospital. By the time we get to the hospital, it's like 9-ish in the morning. I can barely keep it together. My contractions are like 4 minutes apart. So they're getting really intense. And I finally get seen by someone. They take me back to this little room, looks at me, and she's like, all right, let's get you checked out. Looks up and she's like, okay, well, you are 4 centimeters dilated. And I was like, what? We sit there for a second, both my husband and I, and we look at each other, and my husband's like, wait, so what are you saying exactly? Like, what does this mean? Are we having this baby today? And she's like, yeah, it looks that way. And in that moment, I think like the world just kind of stopped spinning for a second. And it was like, part of me was having trouble even processing because of the discomfort I was experiencing. And then the other part of me was just like, wait, is this really happening? Like, did I really just leave my house thinking I was gonna go for a checkup, and now I'm having a baby today? Looking back, I think honestly, I think God just took over in that moment, because I remained pretty calm. And once she said like the baby is most likely coming today, I just had a shift in my mind, and I was like, all right, everything that I've thought up until this point, everything I've thought my birth was going to be, all of that, like, it has to go out the window. It's go time. I'm giving birth today. Like, let's get in that headspace. And by the way, when I tell you we had nothing set up in our house, and I had told myself, like, once I hit 36 weeks, that's when I'm gonna do like a full house prep, whatever. So we have nothing ready at all. Like, we had to leave the dog at the house. Luckily, someone from my church came to feed her and stuff. It was just a whole mess. After I find out I'm having a baby, I call my mom and I'm like, hey mom, don't freak out, but I'm at the hospital, I'm in labor, and I'm having the baby today. She's like, oh. And then she's like, okay, it's fine, everything's gonna be fine, you're gonna do great, don't worry about it, and like went into mom mode immediately. And I was like, okay, all right, bye. So she has time to kind of figure out her flight situation. She's like, I'm coming there. So she ended up hopping on a flight and getting there the next day. After that, I really didn't talk to anyone. We called our midwife. We were like, hey, you know, John is in labor and they say she's most likely having the baby today. And my midwife was like, okay, you know, I will come over to the hospital. Sorry that things are not going according to plan. And the thing is, when it comes to home birth in the state of Texas, you can't legally have a home birth if you're under 37 weeks. So there's no way at this point that I could have had the baby at home even if I wanted to. So she just kind of reassured me that things were gonna be okay and started getting ready, and then met us at the hospital. I finally get put into my own individual room where I'm going to have birth, and things like just rapidly kept picking up throughout the day. I would say probably around 12 p.m. So I'd been laboring there for about 3 hours. That's when my midwife came and really just helped me get moving. So in the very beginning of my time at the hospital, I was just laying in the bed, just kind of like rolling around, really uncomfortable. And then once she got there, she was like, okay, Jonna, like, if you want things to speed up and you want to continue to progress, you're gonna have to move your body a little bit. And I'm like, no, I can't. She was just really supportive and helped me get out of the bed. I started walking around, getting in different positions, bouncing on the ball. I mean, I utilized every square inch of that room for this labor process. And once I got up and I actually started moving around and getting a little more active, I will say it helped tremendously. It started kind of bringing back that feeling of like, this can still be a beautiful birth experience. And even though I'm not in the comfort of my own home, we can still make it comfortable. So we dimmed all of the lights in the room. We put on some worship music. And I just kind of made my way around. Finally, I ended up getting in the tub, which I don't think I was supposed to, but to be honest, I was not really asking for permission for anything. I was just asking for forgiveness every time the nurse would come back in the room and I'd be like in some crazy position. I could tell she was like, all right, this girl is. I get in the tub and I think I was probably laboring in the tub for like 2 hours. And I will say this is where, for me, the experience started to feel really spiritual. I felt like the presence of God was just surrounding me. I was in this like mental trance. I kind of like fell asleep. I don't even know how long I was asleep for, but I just remember laying there and my midwife is next to me and she's getting cups of water and she's pouring them on my belly, and I'm just like, I'm praying, I'm asking God to just help me get through this. And that's where I think the surrender really started to take place. It was like I had this realization that even though my birth was not looking like what I thought, things that I had specifically prayed for, like being able to labor in the water. I originally was planning to have a water birth, so getting to still be in the water and have that experience, even though it seemed like something so small, it just reminded me that God was still with me and He was still in control of my birth and my entire experience. I get out of the tub and by this time I probably only had 2-3 hours most left before I had the baby. So I am continually progressing, and when I got out of the tub, my contractions were probably like 2-3 minutes apart, maybe 2 minutes apart. I was about 7 centimeters dilated and hit about 7 centimeters. That's where I started to question myself. I'm like, maybe I should get the epidural. And I even said it to my husband and to my midwife. I was like, I think I want the epidural. I think I want the epidural. And my husband was like, you know, Jonna, that isn't what you want. And mind you, I had made it very clear my whole pregnancy. I hadn't even so much as taken a Tylenol. Like, I was not wanting any sort of intervention if it were possible. Obviously, I know that medical emergencies happen, but I did not want any intervention if possible. And my midwife is like, okay, well, we can talk about the epidural. Do you want to talk about it? We can kind of weigh some of our options. And I'm like, talk about it, please talk about it, please. One thing that I remember her saying is, you know, yes, you will experience relief from the pain. There's no denying that, but it can also prolong the process of your labor. And after she said what she said about the labor taking even longer, I don't even think I responded. I think I just zipped it and I was like, you know what? Maybe I don't want the epidural because I don't want to be doing this any longer than I have to be doing this. Went out the window. I continued kind of just trying to mentally get through it. Contractions are getting closer and closer. The nurses had left at that point, and I just remember getting to a point where I'm like, I feel that I want to push. Oh, and I should say, my water hadn't broken at this point. So I'm like progressing in labor, contractions are getting closer together, I'm dilating more, but my water still hadn't broken. So I get to this point and I'm like, I'm ready to push. Like, I can feel it in my bones. I know my body wants to start pushing. And no one was in the room except for me, my husband, and my midwife. So we get the nurse back in, and I'm like, I feel like I'm ready. I feel like I'm ready. She looks at me. She's like, oh yeah, you're 10 centimeters dilated. And I'm like, yeah, I can feel that I'm 10 centimeters dilated. And she was like, okay, well, you know, do you want us to help break your water? Because once we do, things will probably speed up pretty rapidly from there. And I'm like, yes, like whatever it takes. I asked if it's gonna like hurt to break my water. She says it's not really gonna hurt. It's just gonna feel like a weird sensation, which it was very weird. I don't even think I'm gonna get into that. It broke my water, and I honestly think from the time they broke my water to the time that I had the baby was probably like 20 minutes. Like, they broke the water and baby was on his way. So as soon as she broke it, I start really feeling these intense sensations to push, and I start pushing. My husband's on one side of me, my midwife's on the other side of me. They're affirming me, they're reminding me like, you are strong, you can do this, God is with you, you know, really just everything that I needed to hear in those moments leading up to birth. And probably pushed hard for like a good 10 minutes, and he was out. Pause, because he's actually waking up from his nap, so hold on. Oh, excuse you. All right, y'all, baby is fed and we are back. So anyway, back to pushing this little baby out. There are a couple things going through my mind. Number one, I was really convinced this whole pregnancy I was gonna have this like pain-free birth. And you can laugh if you want, but I have seen it happen, okay? And I believe that the mind is a really powerful thing. It was not pain-free, it was pain-filled, but it was also spirit-filled, and I think that's really like what took over and carried me through. I think what made the process for me so fast was the fact that once it got to that really intense pain, I was like, I am not sitting and doing this for like an hour, 2 hours. Like, I won't be able to do it. So instead of like breathing through the contractions and letting my body just do what it was supposed to do, once I got to that point where I knew he was ready, I was like, no, 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 no. I took a deep, huge breath and I shoved that baby out. And maybe that wasn't the best way to go about it, but he was out in 15 minutes and I was done and we were good to go. As soon as he came out, I was just screaming. I was like, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. So surreal. I just had this rush of emotion, and they put him on my chest, and I just couldn't believe he was finally in my arms. That he was 5 pounds, 8 ounces. He was born at 5:08 p.m. and he was born on 8/5, August 5th, which I just love how God is so intentional and so divine in his timing. Even the numbers around his birth, 5 being representative of grace and 8 being representative of new beginnings, and it just felt like this full circle moment where I was seeing the promise of God right in front of me in the form of this little perfect baby. The amazing news was, even though I went into labor 5 weeks early, baby was perfectly healthy. He was a little small and he was a little bit grunty just because his lungs were working a little hard to breathe. But other than the fact that he was just small, he was perfect. I had to stay in the hospital for 2 days because they just wanted to monitor things. And when I tell y'all, I was like begging these people to go home. I was like, please, like, and I know they were just doing their job, and I don't like being in hospitals. I don't like being surrounded by sickness, and I just feel like it brings my whole energy down. So I'm like, yeah, I want to be in the comfort of my home now. As soon as the baby came, I was like, let's go. Stayed there, and honestly everything worked out so well because my childhood best friend had come to Dallas to visit on a road trip that she was taking across the country, and I never thought that like the best friend that I grew up with as a child would be there the day that I had a child. Like, we don't even live in the same state. It worked out that she was there, so she actually went to my house for me, picked up my dog, took my dog to the dog sitter, brought me Chick-fil-A, my first post-pregnancy meal, which, I mean, are you really shocked? No. Brought it to the hospital, got to meet the baby, stayed with us most of the evening that evening, and it was just beautiful. My sister ended up coming to the hospital, and then the next day when my mom got in town, she came, and then she went to my house while we were still at the hospital, deep cleaned my entire home. Everything in my home, y'all. Just got everything all organized for me. I think after I gave birth, it really started to settle in. Like, on the way home, I was like, we just left a couple days ago thinking that we were getting a checkup, and we're going home with a whole baby. We've just been off to the races ever since. I feel like I've really just been adjusting to motherhood, which has come with so many ups and downs and in-betweens. Actually, I recorded a YouTube video on motherhood and that whole journey with my friend Ave on her channel, so I will tag her right here if you guys want to go check that out. But yeah, I feel like I've just been adjusting. I've been figuring this thing out day by day. I don't have a blueprint, and I'm able to really look back on my birth experience with so much gratitude, because even though I'm a person that likes things to go according to plan, and I had this whole plan in my mind, it didn't go according to that at all, and it was still so beautiful. Like, I never thought, you know, my childhood best friend would get to be there, and all of these little things where I feel like God was really orchestrating it the entire time, even though I, in the moment, didn't know what to expect and really just didn't know what was happening. That is the entire birth journey. I will definitely record more on like the transition to motherhood if you guys want to hear about that, or just like work-life balance, how I've been managing things. That is it, you guys. I appreciate you sticking around and watching this video. I'm really excited to get back into creating more content here on YouTube. I just love getting to sit down and chat with y'all like this. So definitely subscribe if you aren't already subscribed, and if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and stay tuned because there is so much more to come. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.